They always assumed I was in it for the money. That was convenient for them. Easier to label me as a thief than to look closer at what I was actually doing. Money was the least important part. It was never about profit. It was about keeping a record, proof that the people who thought they were untouchable could be cataloged like anyone else. I didn't pick addresses at random. Each place was tied to something I was owed, a debt no one wanted to acknowledge, a promise that never materialized. People forget those details. I didn't. I kept track in a ledger I started when I was 23. It was just a cheap spiral notebook at first. Names, dates, amounts. Over time, it grew into something more structured. A reference, a map of obligations no one but me cared about. I learned early that patience was the most useful skill. I'd watch a place for weeks, sometimes months. I studied the routines, the patterns, when deliveries came, when the porch light was left on, which windows never closed all the way. I'd drive past at different hours, take photographs from a distance. I never stood out because I never gave them a reason to look twice. I always carried the same tools. A set of picks I'd practiced with so many times it felt automatic. A pair of thin gloves. A flashlight with a red filter so the beam wouldn't show in the dark. No electronics I couldn't discard. No phone. Nothing I couldn't walk away from. When the night came to go in, I never felt nervous. That's what people expect, that you're shaking, adrenaline flooding your head. It wasn't like that. It was more like crossing items off a list. A process I knew start to finish. The rain helped that night. Covered the sound of the latch slipping, masked the steps. I didn't hurry. I never hurried. I moved the same way every time. Slow, deliberate, no wasted motion. Inside, it was almost always the same. A hallway cluttered with things people told themselves they needed. Shoes, unopened mail, a light someone forgot to turn off. I'd walk through the rooms in the same order. Kitchen first. That's where people leave their evidence, receipts, invoices, reminders of what they owe. Then the study or the bedroom. I never rifled through drawers I didn't have to. I knew exactly what I was there to collect. Most nights I didn't take much. A ledger, a stack of files, a phone. Sometimes just a single envelope. Things that would mean nothing to anyone else, but would matter to the person who thought they were above consequence. I didn't care about jewelry or cash unless it connected to the record. If it didn't prove the debt, it stayed behind. I always left the place in order. That was important. I didn't want them to feel violated in the way most victims do. I wanted them to feel uncertainty. The sense that someone had been close enough to touch their secrets but chose to leave everything else alone. That was the part that lasted. When I got back to the storage unit, I'd sit down and log what I'd taken. Same process every time. Date, address, contents. A short note about anything unusual. That became my archive. A quiet proof that every transaction had been accounted for, even if no one else would ever read it. For a while, it worked exactly the way I intended. I'd settle the ledger one address at a time, and no one ever came asking questions. If there were cameras, I knew where they pointed. If there were neighbors, I knew when they slept. I wasn't careless. That was the point. The first time they started putting it together, it wasn't because I'd made a mistake. It was because someone else did. A delivery driver noticed my vehicle parked where it shouldn't have been. That was enough to start a report. Enough to make someone cross-reference plates and addresses. From there, the threads started to connect. The insurance claims, the old debts, the pattern only I thought I could see. When they came to my door, I didn't pretend to be surprised. I knew eventually someone would be patient enough to look at all the pieces the way I did. That was always the risk. You keep records long enough, they become evidence instead of proof. They asked me why I did it, why I kept the ledgers, why I couldn't just let the debts go. I didn't have an answer they wanted. The truth is simple. I did it because it felt right. Because some debts don't vanish just because time passes. They wait. They keep a shape in the dark. And eventually someone has to balance the account. I won't apologize. That's the part they'll never understand. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about fear. It was about order. About knowing every line in the ledger was settled, and no one could pretend otherwise. If you're looking for regret, you won't find it here. You asked for the truth. This is all I have. I kept the records because someone had to. And if that makes me a criminal, so be it.